All right, let's start with a demo. Now let's review how we actually got there. First, I created an agent. It's a bit confusing because if I go to an agent, I do not see the agent that I created because that was created under Microsoft 365 Copilot. The agent that I created was not from here. I actually went and selected my Copilot for Microsoft 365. And in here under agents, I was able to create a new agent, right? So it's a bit confusing, to be honest, because now we have two types of agents. Let's open it. The purpose of this agent is to do two things. Number one is to pull information about free text invoice from Dynamics 365 Finance and Operations. It actually pulls from the Dataverse, but because I have dual write, that information came from Dynamics 365 F&O into Dataverse. So that's the first task. The second task is to then create a calendar event with the details from that invoice so I can follow up with them, let's say, about the payment. In order to activate that agent, I had to actually open it inside the Teams or inside Microsoft 365 Copilot right here. I went to the Copilot and then I see the list of all the agents that were added under my M365 Copilot and I could select it here. I was not able to trigger it from the Copilot right here by mentioning the key phrases that are mentioned in the instructions, for example, for that agent, right? So the only way for me to engage with that agent was to actually select it either in Teams chat or in the agent selection in my M365 Copilot. The useful thing that I found was to add different starter prompts. Here I have three. The first one that I used was basically to say, show me a summary for free text invoice number 34. I could use that prompt and then modify free text invoice number itself, right? So it's very easy to start a conversation by using a prompt. Then I had other prompts such as to create an Outlook calendar event. So basically a meeting to follow up about that free text invoice. And I also tried to create a to-do task in Microsoft, but that did not work. The Copilot always threw an error. Now let's take a closer look at two actions that were at play. The first one is actually right here. It's a free text invoice prompt. This prompt was created separately, so let me show you how it was created. I will go to a library. I will click on prompts. Here's my free text invoice summary prompt. If I go into edit and click on next. So in order to see that free text invoice summary, I had to configure a prompt such as this. Show free text invoice summary for free text invoice number, which was my input number one, and then show invoice ID and customer name, etc. You see that I'm fairly vague here. I do not specify all the fields that the agent will list for me for that free text invoice. And then I mentioned several data sources. In here, I mentioned free text invoice entity.invoice, customer account, invoice name, and the due date. And I added those as the knowledge sources. These knowledge sources are in here. And you see that I actually had to filter these knowledge sources to show me only the records that have a match on the invoice number. So when you test that prompt, you will see that the agent showed me invoice ID, customer name, customer account, due date, and the record link. Now let's go back to our agents. So I'll go to the library, go to agent. Here's that agent that I have created. And the reason why I did it in the prompt is because the add knowledge function inside the agent itself currently, as of February 21st, 2025, allows me to only add SharePoint. So I could not add the relevant knowledge from Dataverse tables inside the agent itself. I had to infuse it in the prompt that I then used as an action. So that was the first action. It was a prompt that was added to that agent. The second action was actually based on the connector to Outlook.com. And that was action that created follow-up meeting. So let's take a look at this. You see right here, it has the action name, display name, etc., connection. But what's most important here is none of those replies from the agent are actually pre-orchestrated. I think that's the biggest difference. You see that in order to create a calendar event, it needs all sorts of inputs: subject, start time, end time, time zone, attendees, optional attendees, etc., right? Quite a lot of things that you need to populate when you're creating a basic meeting inside Outlook. But what I chose is basically to allow an agent to derive those values. So dynamically filled with the best options. So I left it up to an agent to decide what the subject and the start dates and end dates should be. And you can see it took some liberties. It actually did not ask me to enter a start or end date in that invite that it was created. So let's take a look. So here's that invite that it created. It populated subject quite nicely, follow up on free text invoice number 34. It populated attendees, but it took a liberty to decide that it should be scheduled for tomorrow and it should be lasting 1 day. And in terms of description is quite nice here, so I have no issues. It's not really that consistent. Sometimes it was prompting me for a list of attendees and the start and end date. Sometimes it was basically deciding on its own. So it's not very predictable in that regard. Sometimes it was asking me about the time zones, etc. Sometimes it was smart enough to actually go and schedule that meeting based on the due date of that invoice. Sometimes in the demo that I show you, it did not do that. So it's really unpredictable how it populates those required values, but the point here is that it does that. Let's go back here. So the only thing that I had to hard code right here was actually the calendar itself. You see that instead of using for the calendar ID dynamically populated with the best option, I actually went and hard coded, selected a calendar that I have available. So that's the biggest difference, because everything that was shown here could have been achieved using cloud flows, using prompts or topics inside of the Copilot, but none of those things had actually been used. I did not create any cloud flows. I did not create any topics. All I did is created an agent with 2 actions and let that agent to decide on how to proceed with those actions. And as I said before, in order to complete those actions, sometimes it had to prompt me for information. Sometimes it had to just decide on its own what to populate. This is in a preview feature, right? Nowhere close near to production, but it gets you a sense of how it will function. Now, by popular demand, not really magic, but can be useful, I guess. Yeah, it had that. Definitely always available. Not sure if I'd call it my best friend yet. No, it tries to do things that you expect it to do, but not really reliably. Lazy, yes, not really a genius yet. I think it solves one problem and may create one problem. None of that was there. It makes things up. I don't know if you call it conspiracy theory. For sure, that one for sure. Polite, yes, not useless. It can help. It does things, but in its own way. I guess. User will have to deal with consequences at the end, I think. There was some of that for sure. No paranoia there. It may be stubborn, but after it overcomes it, it becomes a bit more helpful. No, always saying yes, always trying to help even when it doesn't. No occasional wandering was detected. No, a few messages about required connections, but that's it. Oh no, far away from that. With that being said, I think that's all I wanted to show to you today. I hope you found this video useful. Until the next time, take care.